yeah, it's this whole point of like doing something for God doesn't necessarily lead to the outcome we expect.
Welcome to the Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by Two Brits and the Bible.
Day 234 in the Two Brits household. Today we'll be covering 35, 36 and 37 of Jeremiah.
Love that. Just to honour the fact that there's Big Brother in the USA at the moment, which my lovely wife is watching and enjoying.
Yeah, Evan just mentioned to me that he'd watched Big Brother, and I was like, "You did what?" But then, like you were saying, we watched the OG first ever series of Big Brothers, where people actually got famous from Big Brother, rather than now it's just a joke. I assume I haven't seen it in at least a decade.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a joke then, but just a joke where they vaguely became famous, like Nasty Nick, as you said, and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, it's a big deal still, at least in some circles. So quite interesting. But let's do some Bible, I reckon.
Yeah, sure. So we're into Jeremiah 35. Jeremiah 35 verse 1. This is the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah from the Lord during the reign of Jehoiakim, yada yada. Go to the Rechabite family and invite them to one of the side rooms and offer them wine to drink. And effectively, this is an example where doing something for God may not lead to the outcome we expect. Because basically, Jeremiah is being hospitable. He's doing what God says and offering these people a drink. But the people don't accept the drink. And it goes on then up in verse 6 and says, they replied, "We do not drink wine because our ancestor so-and-so gave us this command, do not drink wine." And then it goes down in verse sort of 12, 13 to say, "Will you not learn a lesson and obey my words? This dude, son of whoever, ordered his descendant not to drink wine, and his command has been kept. And to this day, they don't drink wine." And basically, he did it to make an example of Jerusalem not obeying, Moses' commands, David's commands, God's commands, Jeremiah's commands, everything. Right. But this other tribe, for
Rechabites,
word, will actually honor not drinking. But it was this it's this whole point of like doing something for God doesn't necessarily lead to the outcome we expect. And then also the task that God gave Jeremiah was to demonstrate the obedience of another family through not accepting his gift. We just have to be obedient to do what God asks us to do. The outcome of what we then do is up to God. We don't need to then get offended if it doesn't go the way we expect. We just have to do our part.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So my first comment could basically have started with 35:1 as well, I guess, because mine is 35:14, but it's all exactly the same about the wine. I suppose one of the things that's interesting is, so the name of the guy is Jonadab, and because Rechab, which is obviously the forefather of the Rechabites, right, said not to drink. I guess God's point also is like, look, these people are just obeying a man, and you're not even obeying me, God, right? Yeah. The other thing I just want to add in is there's like a bit of a debate in Christianity, isn't there, about whether we should drink wine or not. I lean towards it's fine to drink wine as long as you're not getting drunk. And clearly you feel the same because you've literally had glasses of wine and stuff while we've done the recordings. But I think that, this bit here is not God saying that we shouldn't drink wine like the Rechabites. As you say, it's more about obedience to whatever the patriarch says, really, and whatever God says. So it's obedience. And then the only other thing I'd say is that who knows why God did this as well, right? Like it could have been that prohibition for those people at that time saved a certain tragedy that only God would know about. So again, that's another reason to be obedient, because only God understands why God sets some of the rules that he sets. Yeah. It's not for us to question that.
Very true. Very true. I like that, man. I like that. So moving into Jeremiah 36 verse 5, there's an interesting part in here because this is where Jeremiah is then dictating his words to Baruch, and it's like it gets to the point where Jeremiah has written all this stuff down and he tells Baruch to go and read out this scroll at the Lord's temple. And the exact word in verse 5 says, I am restricted. I'm not allowed to go to the Lord's temple. And basically I'm like, oh, this is probably because he went to the Lord's temple and started prophesying about if you do this, that, and the other, then this is what's going to happen. And the priests and the people that were going there probably just got super hacked off of him and told him, mate, you're not allowed around here anymore.
Right.
And the point that came out to me was like, actually, there will be human consequences for doing God's work. And that shouldn't put us off doing God's work. Like, again, it's this whole, we don't necessarily get the outcomes we expect. It's not always going to be roses and daisies, but we need to maintain true to what God's asked us to do.
100%. I mean, obviously, tomorrow we're going to talk about how they lowered Jezza into a bloody cistern, right? So, yeah, you definitely don't always get what you feel you would get, and you don't always get recognition. You could argue that's true with all of them, right? Like Moses had plenty of grief, even though he was the leader of the Israelites out of its slavery in Egypt and stuff. So sometimes there is some suffering. I mean, actually all of them, right? Literally every single person you can imagine. 36 verse 32 is my next one. So if you want to do 15, go.
Yeah, it was just a really quick one, but a fairly important one, really, because King Hezekiah then comes and asks, they get the scrolls read. Sorry, they get Baruch to read the scrolls to the elders and the important people. And then they're like, we must report this to the king. But then the officials say to Baruch, you and Jeremiah go and hide. And it was this element of being obedient to God and king at the same time, where actually they submitted to what the officials said to go and hide, but they were still obedient in delivering the word of the Lord. And it was just like a really simple thing, basically. But actually, and again, I'm going to chat about this tomorrow too, being obedient to what you've been told to do by man, but still being obedient to God as well. Sorry.
Yeah, the King of Kings. Exactly, dude. My thinking on the next bit is basically like building on this whole thing with the scroll, right? So the fact that they take the scroll, give it to the scribe, and then the king burns it right there. That's 36 verse 32. The only thing I added to it is I get the banter of like, well, you didn't like that scroll. I'm going to like double the words on the scroll, like you said, right?
Yeah.
But I do think it would have been really cool if Jeremiah had literally recited word for word the original scroll. I suppose there's no way to prove it anyway because the original was burnt, but it would have been pretty uncanny for the king to be reading. It's like, hang on a minute, I literally read these exact same pages as I burnt them a minute ago.
Yeah.
So that whole thing is really very interesting to me.
Absolutely.
And then, we just got a couple more in 37, innit?
Yeah, go on. If you do yours, then I'll bring home the last couple, I suppose.
Sounds good. So this again actually links a bit to what you were saying about the human consequences sometimes. So Jeremiah was put into a vaulted cell in a dungeon where he remained a long time, 37 verse 16. So a lot of prophets end up in prison at some point or another, right? And I was just thinking about it. You've got Joseph, obviously. You've got Jeremiah here. You've got Jonah is in the belly of the whale for 3 days. You've got Paul. You've got John the Baptist. And I probably couldn't go on off memory, but there's like 6 or 7 right there, right? So just, remember that sometimes following God again will involve suffering. As a matter of fact, I would go as far as to say sometimes if you're suffering, it might be a sign that you're being pretty obedient to God, unfortunately.
The enemy is obviously coming out to get you for a reason. So
yeah,
absolutely, man. So a couple of final things that I was going on about. So Jeremiah basically, when he's actually taken into prison, he's taken into prison by a dude who was the grandson of Hananiah, who was the false prophet that then ended up getting killed. And I just noticed that. I was like, oh, no way. What are the chances of that? And it's like, people will take offense at your ministry and they will try to find a way, and there will be ways that they'll get back to you. And then actually at the end of that whole section there, Jeremiah 37, 16 to 17, 13, by the way, was when Hananiah's grandson rocked up. I don't have time. I might chat about it tomorrow. Beauty. Tomorrow's readings are more of Jeremiah, isn't it, really? 38, 39, 40, 41. Beauty, lovely. Yeah, all right. Smashing. Take care, mate. See you tomorrow.